But when you're doing good things for the right reasons, good things happen. Trust in the process, trust in yourself, trust that your good interests will be rewarded by the world.
Welcome to Built for Profit podcast, where entrepreneurs share real stories and strategies that actually work.
We're here to inspire, challenge, and give you the playbook to profit with purpose. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
We are so excited about our guests that we're featuring today. And we have Mike Cruz from End Zone Sports with us. And his background is one of the things that we love the most about him. I think when we read it, we were already so excited about this recording. And then we read through everything about his bio and his background, and we got even more excited. So we're going to let him share some of that. But Mike, first of all, welcome to Built for Profit. We're so excited to share your story, your brand, your mentality. It's one of the things that we've heard raving about you. So welcome to the show. And we want you to start by sharing, for anyone who doesn't know what End Zone Sports is, and a little bit about who you are as well. But I live in this world. My kids are young, so I'm aware of things like End Zone Sports. But tell us in your own words a little bit about the brand and then just who you are.
Sure. So End Zone Sports is a franchise youth sports, overall sports program. We do things like come to your children's school and teach sports. We have adult sports leagues. We have everything from your average run-of-the-mill sports, baseball, basketball, soccer, to cornhole tournaments. Anything sports related we can do. And our main focus is to bring the community together while we do it. And also as an entrepreneurial side, it's one of those things where if your community needs something, you're not going after it like a shark. You're bringing the community a need and making a pretty penny while doing that.
And then tell us a little bit about you. You obviously didn't
Sure.
start with End Zone Sports. This wasn't the thing you were doing.
I'm trying to be humble. I don't want to go off the deep end about me, but I've always been a leader. I remember when I was 16 years old in high school and most of my friends were out doing the wrong thing and partying. I was already an assistant manager at Chuck E. Cheese. So it's just either in you or it isn't to be a leader. Not to say that you can't succeed if you don't have leadership qualities at the age of 16. It's just that I knew there was something different about me from that young of an age, that no matter what I did, I wanted that top spot. I wanted to rule the world, so to speak. And I still have that in me where, not that I feel like I deserve more than everyone else, but I feel that I work hard enough that I do.
Okay. So from Chuck E. Cheese, you got a few things that are unique. Just touch on them. Oh,
Yeah.
pull it out
All
of
right.
you.
So it's funny because even after Chuck E. Cheese, I was 17 years old when I joined the military. In fact, I always tell people when the conversation comes up, and speaking of, it's almost that day now. Where were you on September 11th? I had a plane ticket in my hand headed to basic training. My very first day in the military was September 11th, 2001. And I was joining from New York City. I was in Fort Hamilton, MEPS in Brooklyn with a plane ticket in my hand when everything went crazy. And that day, there were 140 something of us ready to join. The day after 9/11, there was only 12 of us who still said, hey, I said I'm going to do it. I'm still doing it. I'm not backing out no matter what. In fact, I'm more excited now that it could be something bigger and something more exciting. But then again, I was also 17 years old and I thought I was invincible at the time. So,
Well, a given. Thank you for your service, especially under those
oh, you're
circumstances.
welcome. It was a pleasure to serve.
I can't even hear
Um,
that story without it gives me goosebumps to hear just someone verbalizing that.
Well, it was a time that froze for us all, that everybody remembers exactly where they were, what they were doing when it happened. And it just so happened that I was in the scariest place you could possibly be. But most of the people that knew I was leaving to the military that day thought I was on a plane somewhere already. And the phones didn't work. Nobody could call me. We didn't even really have cell phones. That was back in the days of like family plans and minutes after 7. And, beepers were still around. Beepers were still a thing. So, they couldn't get a hold of me even if they tried. And it wasn't until later on the next day that I was finally able to get a hold of my parents and a hold of the people I love and let them know, hey, first of all, I'm still here in New York City. I haven't left yet, and I'm still alive. I'm not on one of those planes. But it kind of set the trajectory for where I was headed. I just wasn't one of those people who said I was going to do something and back out. If I said I was going to do something, I was going to do it. And I've always been that way, and it stood with me as a pillar of my life still to this day.
So you were in the military about 4 years, correct?
Correct. Yeah. 4 years and out, man. The military, I love it. It teaches you how to grow up quick. It matures you very fast. From there, I moved to California, where in California, even back then, was still the most expensive state you can live in. So back in 2005, I was living with roommates doing the whole 21, 20, 22-year-old thing, but I didn't have a regular job. I was working a commission only freight broker position where and when we first started this office, there were four of us. By the time I left, I was the director of the company and we had 21 employees under me. I never did anything regular, never did anything basic. When it came to a start, that was exactly what it was. That was a stepping stone. That was where we're starting. I don't want to ever be back where we started in the future. It also taught me a lot about myself because that was my first entrepreneurial position where I had to earn my worth. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to take the day off. You take the day off, you don't get paid. You miss out on commissions. You can't afford your rent that month. And that never was me. From the time I started working there, they knew they had a star because I was at work 2 hours before everybody else and I left work 2 hours later than everybody else. So when everybody checked their paychecks on Fridays, mine reflected that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't get that really being 100% commission is entrepreneurial because you are
Mhm.
having no limits, but you're betting on yourself,
That's
which
right.
a lot of people feel comfortable with it and some people don't. Yep.
Yep. And,
So,
and it's even harder to recruit people because now, as a director, once I graduated from this entrepreneurial position, I had to train people on how to do what I did. And one thing I always say is, hey, you could do what I do, but you can't do it how I do it. I'm a beast. I'm a savage out there. So I don't expect you as somebody who's coming on board that I'm training to reach the mountains that I've climbed, to overcome the hills that I've climbed. I'm going to try to make it easier for you. But at the end of the day, if you're not there at 4:30 a.m. like I am, don't expect to put up the numbers that I did. Don't expect to break my records. Don't expect to come anywhere near what I'm doing unless you're going to work as hard as I do.
it sounds like you won some awards in that industry.
Oh yeah, I'm beast mode. I could have stayed there forever if I wanted to. The problem was California taxes are too high. So when when it comes to 1099 positions out there in California, it's difficult because California now has rules where they want everybody to be on W-2. So if you're a 1099, you kind of get penalized for that. When the IRS came and told me what I owed them, I said, nope, I'm going back to college. And I got my degree in journalism, by the way, which I never used, but it was
Now,
still beneficial. I got to do a lot of good things. I went to college at Kingsborough in Brooklyn, New York. I came back home to New York City after that. And I got to interview Andy Garcia, got to go to album release parties for Kanye West. These are just the normal collegiate things that happen when you go to school in New York City. It wasn't far-fetched at the time, especially as a 22-year-old. It just felt normal. But now looking back at it, they're like, whoa, you met all these famous people. And, that is the smallest part of my success story. Those people have their own success highlights. And, I'm not hanging on the coattails of anybody who made it famous before me. But it
Mike,
was fun.
you're on a video podcast right now, which is a form of journalism. So I'd say you are using
What?
that
Touche.
to your
Touche. Got me there. Got me there. But I'm
unintended.
not
I like it.
hosting it. I'm the one being interviewed. I'm sitting in Andy Garcia's seat.
What this is even funnier, and you can't make this up. Last night, if you pulled up my phone, there's a picture of Andy Garcia on my TV in the movie Twisted, and I sent it to my friend back in Texas because that was like her crush of us. She's probably killing me for saying this. Yeah, I apologize ahead of time, Lloyd. But yeah, so
That's
you
all.
said Andy Garcia. I'm like, I have a picture right now on my phone. I just texted it last night. Yeah.
That's so awesome. I actually interviewed him for the release of the movie City Island. When that movie came out, that's when I was in college at the time. And I got to sit down with him at the Waldorf and interview him, interview his daughter, who was also a star in that movie. That was her first
I did not know.
come out role. Ezra Miller was in that movie, the kid who played the Flash. There was a lot of people there that one by one, I just kind of got to go down the line and interview them. And once again, even in that profession, I mean, I didn't choose to do journalism as a profession after college, but I mastered college. I graduated with an almost perfect 4.0 just because anything I do, I'm going to try to break records. I'm going to try to take it down. I'm never good at second place. I'm never happy with second. And I've had to settle for second place many times. But I guarantee you, the people who beat me were somewhat like me. They have similar characteristics and traits to what I have if they were able to beat me at anything.
Mike, I love your passion. I can feel it. I can hear your leadership. So, what sparked this entrepreneurial journey? What got you here?
Great question. Well, I was born and raised playing sports. I'm originally from Red Hook Projects in Brooklyn, where there aren't many exits there. There's ways of learning leadership that are so wrong. You know, you see so many people that, man, you just think if you did the right thing with those skills, you could be the next Elon Musk, or you could be the next. But unfortunately, the opportunities, especially in the 80s in the projects in Brooklyn, it was just non-existent. So sports were one of those ways where you can escape. You can get to play ball with the upper echelons of society and see how they react in certain situations, see what made them successful. You know, whereas when you're just stuck in that same little area, you're around a bunch of people who aren't reaching their full potential, or don't even know what their full potential is, or don't even know what potentials are out there in the world for them. So going to play sports all around the country, that helped me meet so many people. It let other people who were successful rub off on me. It also showed me that the harder you work, the better you get. You know, I'm a smaller guy. I'm not one of these kids that was born to be Shaquille O'Neal size. You know, so I had to work
Tell,
harder
you
than
can't
those
tell on
kids.
here.
Thank you. If anybody asks, I'm 6 foot. We'll
Yeah,
take it.
I'm very tall myself.
No, but at that point in time, you know, I remember when I was in the fourth grade, you know, you don't really realize your environment is bad. It's just where you are, where you live, your friends are there, your family's there, you know. But at the fourth grade was a turning point because my favorite teacher, the principal of my school, was shot and killed.
Oh, wow.
So while I was in the fourth grade, the principal, the guy I loved the most in the school, was shot and killed. It just made me realize, like, hold on, this environment is not what a kid's supposed to be
Mhm.
going to school in, you know? And, you know, from that point on, I took my escape from there very seriously. You know, and I'm also thankful for both of my parents also having that same vision. Like, we got to get out of here. This is not where we want to raise our children, not where we want to be. And from there, we moved to Staten Island as a teenager once I reached the high school ages. I went through elementary school and junior high school in the projects in Brooklyn, New York. And one of the best lessons my mom ever told me is don't be a product of your environment. You know, just because you're born here doesn't mean you are here. You know, you're don't carry this with you everywhere you go. It's better for people to say, "Hey, you have a New York accent. I could tell you're from New York," versus, "Hey, you have a project accent. I could tell you from the gutter." You know what I'm saying? So, you know, not to shame anybody, because, like, you know, I'm proud of where I came from and what my parents and myself have escaped from, but I also don't want to drag that along with me like a ball and chain
Mhm.
either. You know, because, you know, I remember I was working back in 2017, and at this point in time, I had already broken every record it ever had. I was the Salesman of the Year award winner back in 2017. I'll tell you a story. So
No
they
one's
were,
surprised
because
by
I was
this stat, Mike.
underqualified.
By the way, no
Say
one's
it again.
surprised by this. Yeah, you came in second.
So
We just end it right here.
yeah. Please don't, please don't. I have so much more to tell you guys. No, so in 2017, at that point, I was underqualified for this job. I only had an associate's degree. They found me. I didn't really apply for this job. One of their higher ups walked into Armani. I sold him thousands of dollars worth of suits, and he's like, "Man, you're a great salesman." And I told him, "Hey, I only have an associate's degree. This job requires a bachelor's. No worries. Come down, apply. I got you. You're somebody special. You're different." So I go apply for the job. I get it. Because I'm underqualified and I'm breaking all these records, they use me to where, you know what? He's underqualified anyway. Let's move him to Massachusetts. Move to Massachusetts, kill it out there in Massachusetts. Then let's move him to Tampa. When I arrive in Tampa, they're telling me, "Listen, Mike, this place is terrible. We won't be mad at you if you don't break records here because we're not expecting much." When I got there, it was 2% effective to plan. They had a special product that they were pushing that was only doing $250 a day. When I left there, it was 167% effective to plan, and that $250 product was doing $10,000 a day. That's just how I get down. And I told him, I said, "I told you I was going to win Salesman of the Year. I told you I was going to break all these records. You're the one who told me that it was impossible. And I'm telling you, not only is it possible, but I'm going to do it." I go to work and I break every record they have. I make my commission. I'm a happy man. But the VP sees me on the front page of the magazine. She sees me breaking all these records, winning all these awards, subject matter expert, all the good things that come along with being a superstar. And she wants to ride along with me. So I take her right along with me to visit all my customers. I'm the same Mike I am now that I
Mhm.
was back then. So
Right.
the customers are saying, "Man, he goes above and beyond. We love him. Don't ever get rid of him. He's the best." At the end of that day, the last thing the VP said to me was, "I would never promote you." And I was broke. I was heartbroken. I said, "Wow, never is such a long time, but 2 weeks is not far away." And I put in my 2 week notice. I never looked back. I said, "I'm never working for anybody ever again." And that was the start of the entrepreneurial lifestyle, the start of me earning what I was worth. You know, and that's a hard a pill to swallow when somebody tells you because you're not as sophisticated or because you don't speak as professionally, you will never have an advantage in this corporate world. And you could take it two ways. You can say, all right, so I guess I'm going to stay here and be your sales rep for the next 20 years. Or you can say, okay, well, then I'm going to find my footing where I can reach my value, where my worth is paid directly to me, where I'm not dependent on somebody else to give me a promotion, where I can promote myself. And from there, I just decided I'm never going to work for anyone ever again in my life. I took that and I wound up moving to upstate New York. I bought a house there for $10,000. Now, if you've ever bought a house for 10,000, you know what that house looks
Actually, it
like.
has
It
wheels
has
on it,
no
I think.
windows, no doors. It was a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom with no bedrooms and no bathrooms. I bought this house for $10,000 and I said, I'm gonna flip this house. I flipped it, made it gorgeous, beautiful, new windows, new roof, new doors, new floors, new sinks, new kitchen, bathroom, everything brand new in this house. I finally passed all the inspections to put it on the market. COVID hits. So the house sits on the market for a year and a half. So now we're scrounging. Me and my family, we're going broke. That was our whole life savings we put into this house. And my wife decides, you know what? We have no choice. This house isn't going to sell. We're still, in the middle of a COVID. Nobody's buying houses right now. She decides she's going to join the military. It was like always like a bucket list item of hers anyway. This is one way she saved our family really because, I was going to come hell or high water sell that damn house. But she joins the military. Within her first 2 weeks at basic training, the house sells. So now she just signed her life away for 4 years. All she had to do was wait 2 more weeks. But the house sells. But that also put us at a crossroads because now my wife's going to be stationed in the Fayetteville area, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And do I want to go back? Now I got this nest egg. Do I want to go back to flipping houses? Something that it was just a great ordeal. So I decided, hey, I am not going to get into that. I'm going to go into a field that I feel comfortable with, something that saved my life, something that brought me positivity and joy throughout my childhood, something that I can pay forward to my community. And that's where End Zone Sports came into play. I reached out to all of the sports franchises. Keep in mind, I knew where I was headed. I knew that I was going to go into a sports franchise. I just didn't know which one. And I don't want to talk bad about any of the other sports
Mhm.
franchises. I don't have anything
Right.
bad to say about them. I chose End Zone Sports because it fit me. It fit my community. I reached out to the other sports franchises and they're telling me, oh, I'm sorry, Fayetteville's too small and too poor. And I'm like, doesn't that mean we need sports more?
Mhm.
And whereas End Zone was like, hey, Mike, I love how you feel. I love your passion. If you believe in it, we believe in you. And that's all I needed to hear, really. I didn't need to hear about the metrics, about what can and can't be done. I always broke those records. I've always been the guy who came out on top. Don't look at what your numbers are telling you. Look at the individual who's telling you. The guy who comes with a track record of success with every single thing I've ever touched. So when End Zone believed in me, I took it and I ran with it. And I love End Zone for that. I'll forever be grateful for providing a platform that allowed me to showcase not only my sales ability, my entrepreneurial ability, but also be myself. Because a lot of business is you. When you go into a business, the reason it either succeeds or fails is leadership. It's at the top of the food chain is why it fails or doesn't. And when I first took this on, once again, I make promises and I stand on them. I told Tony, I said, I'm going to the top of the food chain. And he's like, oh, Tony, by the way, is the president. He's the owner of, the founder of End Zone Sports. He said, everybody says that. And I'm like, all right, when Mike Cruz says it, believe it. Within the first year, I broke the record for the biggest opening day ever. In fact, let me tell you how good everything fell into place. Mind you, COVID's still going on. So I bought this business in 2020, in November of 2020, kind of towards the tail end of COVID. I start marketing. I start accepting all these registrations. First things first, the mayor's calling me saying, hey, don't do this. The mask mandate hasn't been lifted. We're going to shut you down. Don't worry about it. I keep accepting registrations. My registrations are still open. People calling me. I'm telling them how awesome this season is going to be. The fire department calls me. Don't do this. If you show up at that field, we're going to take you to jail. All right, yeah, whatever. Still accepting registration, still taking phone calls. I have the police department calling me saying, hey, do not do this. We're going to block the road off. You're not going to be able to do this. I hear so many people are coming to your opening day. So now, a week before my opening day, I'm getting these phone calls almost on a weekly basis from the municipalities, from the local fire department, the local police department, telling me not to do this. At my coaches meeting, I'm telling people what I expect. I'm telling you how the season's going to run. I'm going over all the rules of the league. And then like in the middle of my speech, I start seeing people in their phones, like kind of losing interest. So I'm like, hey, when you're up in the front talking, hey, I'm up here talking, guys. What are you doing? Like, what's going on? Have some respect. And they're like, no, Coach Mike, the mask mandate was just lifted 3 days before my opening day. So all of those people calling me, telling me they're going to take me to jail, they all had to eat it. They all had to swallow their words and watch me succeed. You know what I mean? And it's maybe it's the universe, maybe it's karma. But when you're doing good things for the right reasons, good things happen. Trust in the process, trust in yourself, trust that your good interests will be rewarded by the world. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I wasn't going to let anybody scare me. I wasn't going to let anybody stop me. I was going to do it just like I said I was. And that day, I had over 1,500 people show up to my opening day.
That's
Over
amazing.
1,500 at a time when people weren't even outside yet. And I was one of the very first youth sports programs maskless in the whole world. Mind you, I'm in a little city here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Just to be the first in the whole world at anything is a beautiful shock. It's like, hey, not a single sports league was brave enough to start accepting registrations 3 months ago. So they won't be open for another 2.5, 3 months. So it just goes to show what type of person I am and the type of person it takes to be to succeed.
And Mike, I want to commend you for this. We talk a lot about mindset, and that's what Elizabeth, I beat her to the punch because she would already have said that. Because half of, you live life inside your head and how you show up to things. Because no business that I've ever heard of, or I'm doing them wrong. You show up and everything goes like the gates open up. Oh, here come on into entrepreneurial world. It doesn't really work that way. There's some challenges there, and it's how you show up and meet them because they're just going to be some, and some are just learning. And
Yep.
we all kind of learned a thing or two in the COVID. It didn't come with a handbook, right?
That's right.
Outside the FDD.
Keep in mind, sports are one way to introduce kids back to social behavior after COVID. These kids were locked up for 1.5 years. I remember my son, he was 2.5, about to be 3 at the time. He shows up to the field, he sees another kid, and he gets this close to the other kid's face. And I'm like, dude, like, no, because, he's been in the house with mommy and daddy for the last, so it's normal for him to get all in our face. It's not normal for him to get in another kid's face like that, So those type of social behaviors were the norm.
Mm-hmm.
For it to be abnormal, it was actually normal. It's like, oh, stop. That's not how we act. That's not how we talk to each other. And it was worse among the teenagers because they're used to talking to each other on Roblox and Minecraft and not really having deep interpersonal conversations with other children their own age. So they're very disrespectful without knowing it. Like their level of sarcasm was disrespectful until we have to say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's rewind. Here's what you said. The correct way to say it in a polite way is this. We were able to provide that platform for the kids to kind of reassess themselves back into society in a normal way. So it was a blessing. And a lot of those people who were there with me on opening day 4.5, 5 years ago are still with me to this day. And that goes to show that I actually cared about them, that I didn't just treat them like a customer. I treated them like they're my family. And Tony was at my opening day and Tony was like, holy smokes, how do you remember all these people's names? And I tell him, you don't forget your aunt's name. You don't forget your cousin's name. These are my family here. Anybody who's willing to pay me $150 a season 4 times a year, $600 a year, I'm going to remember that guy's name. Otherwise, they're going to pay me $150 and I'll never remember them again. And most of the time, they'll never sign up again. There's no interpersonal relationship there. There's no bond for them to stay with me. They could go to any sports league and get their name forgotten. But there's only one here in Fayetteville where they get their name remembered, where their kids' names get remembered. Some of them, I remember their birthdays,
Yeah.
It's not to say like an exquisite memory, but when people are important to you, you remember these things.
Yeah.
I was going to say, anyone who's in Fayetteville who hasn't already explored End Zone Sports will now be exploring End Zone Sports. But one of the things that I want to ask you about, Mike, so your passion and your background, your mentality, I feel like it's been there from the beginning. I mean, truly,
yeah.
like with what you've shared. So what would you say to someone, or how would you, it sounds like you do a lot of coaching, mentoring, which I love. What would you say to someone who they weren't born that way, or they didn't have that at 16, but they want to, they see someone like you and they're like, I want to be that. I want to aspire to that. What would you say to them to help them get there or shift that mentality?
Sure, that's a great question. I'm responsible for training people all the time, and I always have been. I want to see other people succeed. First of all, I'm not a selfish success. I am the type of successful person who wants other people to follow in my footsteps. I even want people to be better than me. I want people to break my record so I have something to chase. But what I tell them all the time is you have to break your shell. You have to ask questions. Asking questions is the best way to learn. One of the things I tell people all the time is if you ask, they may say no, but if you never ask, you never know. So ask. What's the worst that can happen? They say no. But if you never ask, guess what? They could have said yes. And the other part of that is being positive. I know it's so hard in a commission only world, in a sales only world, in a world where if you don't sell, you're going to go home broke. It is so hard to stay positive. But if you keep that positive mental attitude, not saying good things will happen, bad things can still happen, but at least you give positivity the opportunity to happen. So you get that no, it didn't work out the way you wanted. So what? Go ask the next person. Move on to the next person on your list. Eventually you'll get one. It's a law of numbers. So I tell people the greatest weapon you have is your voice, is your mouth. Talk, learn your voice, find your strength inside you that you can speak through. And people will see that, people will fear that. And I feel like as a human and as most humans, people smell BS. So if you pretend to be someone you're not, if you're not or your authentic self, nobody's going to trust you. And trust is what people purchase.
But one of the things that you're known for, and I love this quote, Mike leaves legendary positive stories everywhere you go. I love that. I think
Oh,
you've done that today, but I want to open this up. And she
oh, man.
just shook. She's, oh God, open up. I don't know. You think people don't know what you're going to say. She never knows what's going to come out of my mouth. So she's probably having a moment, but this is like the moment. I think we have so many bumper stickers from or already for some of your sayings, which I like to think Shay-isms and keep up with you, Mike, but we'll see. Game on.
Yep.
Okay. Of myself.
Thank you, Shay. Appreciate you.
What is so there you may have had the what have I done? Maybe a moment in your business, the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like the fear you feel is real, maybe the reasons aren't. And some people don't go into that journey. It's a pulling, but they have families, they have things. I don't know about you. When I told my parents I'm gonna go off and do a franchise and take money out, and they looked at me like, you never ran a business and you're like,
Yeah.
this doesn't seem like a good plan, Shay. So
Yep.
what share that, give some inspiration, leave this legendary positive story right now.
Sure. So, where I am now is never where I want to be 10 years from now. And I want every entrepreneur on the planet to feel that. Comfort is your enemy. Ego is not your amigo. Lose your ego. Shed this pride and this confidence that you've made it. There's no such thing as making it. If you look at the most successful people on this planet, they're constantly still growing. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, even Donald Trump, none of them are happy where they are because they're aspiring to be more. And that's where I put myself. I put myself in that category where I am now is not where I am 10 years from now. In fact, I will be so unhappy with myself if 10 years from now, I'm still sitting here. When you guys interview me 10 years from now, I'm hoping that we have a whole new bunch of stories to tell and some more legendary things to add on to it, But I can tell you a couple great stories. I'll tell you one awesome one. So when I first moved back home to Brooklyn, I had like an inkling of where my future would be. I was coaching a little league baseball team. I was loving life. And then I decided, hold on, I'm still young enough that I could play baseball myself. So I decide, all right, I'm not over the hill yet. I'm going to join a baseball league. I joined this semi-pro league. I was good enough to make the team. I broke the record there. Most stolen bases, most singles, and this is me as on the borderline of washed up, like, but the fact of the matter,
Live life
but
in
the,
your,
but the,
in your head.
but the fact that I was brave enough to enter something and confident enough to try something that even I was a little nervous, like, do I still have it? Can I still do it? Trust yourself. You always are. You always have that heart. You always have that determination. It's inside you. And for those of us who are on that fence, you're kind of borderline of whether to start a business, whether to take the risk. A franchise is a good way to kind of ease your way into owning a business if you've never owned a business for the first time, because they have a blueprint already written out for you. They have their proven track record of success. They'll help you along the way versus taking something on yourself, which it's pretty risky, and you can make a success out of it, but there's that lack of help. So you're paying the royalty fees in exchange for somebody helping you along the way to succeed. And I can't say enough about that. I can't praise franchises as a whole for that blueprint that they do for their franchisees.
I would totally second that. I always say if you do it alone, it's like being the Lone Ranger and Tonto got shot. It's a lonely row for sure. And they have the winning chocolate chip cookie recipe or something. It's like they're giving you the stuff that works and you're in it
Yep.
together. They want you to succeed, which is all the good things.
Was there anything that in your journey, specifically probably your fur, that you were like, man, probably would have been helpful to know that? What would that look like that you could share with someone else? So they maybe don't have that
Wow.
moment.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, in my first year, keep in mind, my only business ownership was the flipping house thing, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And it still wasn't that bad at the end because it was my own. I didn't owe anybody a commission. I didn't owe anybody anything. Once that house sold, I had kept it all to myself. But from that point, I decided, hold on, I need some help here. I didn't have any accounting. I didn't have a lot of the simple metrics that a normal business owner would have, as it being my first time. Now I realize a lot of it is about accounting. A lot of it is about accountability. So just learning through a franchise, I now can take that next step towards owning my own business in the future. So I will tell the average person who's, maybe on the fence, maybe about to spend their whole life savings, try a franchise before you do it on your own. And then from there, use that as a stepping stone to eventually have your own. But these successful people who came before me, who own the franchises around the country, they know what they're doing. That's why they're successful.
Yeah. I'd love for you to share one tactical thing because you have talked, I think, in every story about your sales, about either the technique or your sales success or crushing these numbers, which we love. So
Yeah.
share without giving away, I don't know, your number one secret or give away your number one secret. But what's one thing that, if I was listening to this and I run a business, I could go apply. Like you're clearly doing something correct.
One of
Like,
the things I use whenever I'm selling something is to find the need. If the main thing is, you never ask a yes or no question. You ask open-ended questions. Get a dialogue started. Don't talk to somebody about, do you like this? No, because the conversation ends right there. Get a conversation, get them to realize who you are. People are likable. I always say this, as individuals, most people are pretty intelligent. When you talk one-on-one with people, you quickly learn that they have to trust what you're saying. And in order to get them to trust you, you have to find out what they need, not what they want, not what you want to sell. They have to need something, but you'll never get there if you're just asking yes or no questions, or if they only know you superficially for reading off of a bullet point questionnaire versus talking to them. Where are you from? What do you like to do? Those type of things where they get to open up about themselves, because a lot of time the needs will emerge through normal dialogue. And it's much harder to get those needs when you're just reading off of a numbered document or a blueprint that somebody else made for you. Every conversation I have is authentic, and I prefer it that way versus something that I've written down and I prepared. Because if I've written down and prepared like a speech, I don't mind giving speeches. I'm great at giving speeches, but I prefer, if we're going to have a conversation, that it be freestyle. It be something that we're both authentic. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to stutter a little bit when we're thinking about what we're going to say, because that's the real you. And the
Yeah.
real you sells, the fake you doesn't.
That's correct. We do stutter a little bit and fumble
Me too.
around.
yeah, I was just laughing because the last time I gave a speech at a word ceremony, I took time to prepare. It's like the few times I ever did. I was trying to be really professional. And we walk into the event. I look at my husband. I said, I think I left those little note cards on my bathroom
Oh no.
roll.
Oh man, I have a lot of little isms that I say all the time. You keep making yourself a better you. You keep elevating yourself in society and in your community. Everything you do should be positive, both in your life, in your community, in your household, and the rest will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what a great way to end it. To focus on positivity. Listen,
Yes,
every
ma'am.
we all need a little bit more positivity and encouragement. And that's one of the reasons that we started this podcast is because the entrepreneurs, I mean, you mentioned the franchise system, and obviously that's a lot of who listens to this. And they have that support. Hopefully, they've got a great
Yep.
franchise that has that support. But in general, entrepreneurs, you can have friends who do it, they can understand, but it is a lot on you. And so, this encouragement, this knowledge, this sharing, this coaching, you've talked about how a lot of your success came from you believing in yourself, but like having different supports along the way that added to it. And when you can combine that, things happen faster and they happen better. And so, we just really appreciate you sharing this. Your
Of
energy is
course.
contagious. And
I'm glad. I'm glad.
yeah,
And if I may, really quick, I just want to say that End Zone Sports is the type where we don't compete amongst each other. We don't have a board saying, "Oh, this guy is number one this month. This guy is number two," because we're always picking each other up. We've created an atmosphere where we don't want any of us to fail.
Mhm.
You know, whether you have a franchise in New York City or you have a franchise in Texas, we're constantly reaching out amongst each other, digging each other's brains, and as so, we've grown. When I first got here, I believe there was only 12 active End Zone Sports franchise. Now we have over 80. And it's because of the environment we created where even as a new guy, you come in and you've got all these people who have your back. And we really emphasize teamwork. And we can't call ourselves a sports program without living what we say we're going to do. And we say we're a team and we stand by that. And that's one thing I really, really, really love and support about End Zone. And I'll be here forever.
I love
ah,
it.
No
yeah.
matter how many other businesses I own, I'm sticking. I'm keeping this one.
Yeah. And I heard about, or we heard about the way that they're just expanding with a couple different lanes that people can go down, which is really interesting. And we'll put the link
Mhm.
in the show notes for anyone who wants to explore a little bit more about End Zone Sports. Because again, with some kids that age, I support this kind of stuff. It's where you can usually find me on my weekends.
Well, I'm so happy you guys brought me on. You know, I don't get to actually talk about this kind of stuff a lot. Most of the kids I are, 16 and under, so it's hard for me to share these type of stories with other entrepreneurs. Just because a lot of times I'm coaching kids or I'm coaching adults or I'm telling them how they can be successful, but I don't get to tell my story. And I feel it's important. So thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Shay. I appreciate for letting me get this all out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what a great story. And thanks for sharing because it inspires so many people. And we hear your passion, your leadership, and the community part. Man, it really speaks to what all the things that we are behind. Yep. And profiting with purpose. So thank you so much for being our guest. And we can't wait to see what's next for Mike Cruz.
And our
Yes,
10-year
ma'am.
interview
More than
follow
10
up.
years from now, more legendary stories coming your way.
We'll be there.